GMAT all day.
Final bonus geometry video and the final video in our lines, angles, and coordinate geometry series. So let's fill out our cheat sheets. First up, we have the y equals mx plus b format for writing the equation of a line. So this should come as no surprise to any of you. Y equals mx plus b format is when you have an equation in the format y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope, b is your y-intercept, or more specifically, it is the value you get for y when x is equal to 0, which just gives you an equation of y is equal to b. So b is really just your y coordinate when x is 0. Your slope can be thought of as the steepness of your line, the steepness with which it is either rising or falling. It can be calculated using rise over run. It's just the difference in your y coordinates over the difference in your x coordinate. And so if you have some point, we'll say 3, 2, then you know your slope is equal to 5 over 4. What rise over run means is to get to the next point on your line, you'd have to go up 5. So that's your rise, and then over 4. So 4 to the right. Then you can get another point on your line. And so what would this be? So up 5 gets you from 2 to 7. And over 4, that should also give your next coordinate of 7. This would be 7, 7. And then based on this, you can draw your line, or at least a rough idea of what your line would look like. Rise over run to calculate slope. So we just talked about that. It is just the difference in your y coordinates over the difference in your x coordinates. Identifying slopes of positive, negative, vertical, and horizontal lines. And so anytime you have a line that is rising from left to right, that is a positive slope. So all of these lines have positive slopes. Anytime you have a line that is falling from left to right, that is a negative slope. So all of these guys here have negative slopes. We have a vertical line in the coordinate planes, that would be something like this, that has a slope that is undefined. And the reason for this is it all goes back to just the fact that you cannot divide by 0. So if we were to plot 2 points on our vertical line here, so say this point here was 3, negative 2. Then we had some other point here, 3, positive 2. If we were to calculate the slope using these 2 coordinates, so y2 minus y1 would be 2 minus negative 2, which is 4. So that would be all over our x coordinates. It would just be 3 minus 3, or 0. And so that is why a vertical line has an undefined slope. Because any two points on that line are going to have the same x coordinate. Therefore, they'll always be dividing by 0 if you try to calculate the slope. You can contrast that with a horizontal line, which does have a slope. It is just a slope of 0. So this is the case where you have something like y is equal to 5 for the equation for your line. And so while it may now look like y equals mx plus b format, it actually is. But it is just because you have a slope of 0, so this mx component is just equal to 0, and you get just y is equal to b. And so this 5 here is also the value, the y coordinate of your y-intercept. Find the slope of a line perpendicular to a given line. I don't know if we talked about this in the video series, but it's not that complicated. So if you have a line perpendicular to any line, its slope will be a negative reciprocal. That slope is the negative reciprocal of the line it's perpendicular to. So if I have some line with the equation y is equal to, we have x plus 5. So what is the slope of a line perpendicular to this line? It would have a slope of negative 2/3. That is the negative reciprocal. And any line with a slope of negative 2/3 will be perpendicular to this one here. The 4 quadrants of the coordinate plane, the only thing you got to remember here is they go counterclockwise. And so coordinate 1 will be any point where your x and y coordinates are both positive. Any point in quadrant 2 will have a negative x coordinate and a positive y coordinate. Any point in quadrant 3 will have both a negative x and a negative y coordinate. Any point in quadrant 4 will have a positive x and a negative y. The relationship between angles formed by 2 parallel lines cut by a transversal. This was this diagram here. 2 parallel lines. You draw a line that cuts through both of them. So it sort of forms these 2 coordinate plane-like halves. So these 2 grids, where 8 angles formed, are going to correspond to each other. So the top right here, with angle A, match with the top right here. Top left will match with the top left here. Bottom left, then the bottom right. And then we also said you can use your knowledge, for example, that 2 angles that form a line must sum to 180 degrees. You can use that to say this here, D must be 180 minus A. But A and D also form a straight line. So D must also be 180 minus A. Therefore, these 2 lines are equal to each other. That's how you get vertical angles, which we talked about. You can also do the same thing to see that this C here is also equal to A. So really, even though it seems like we have 4 separate angles, we only have 2. Everything is either equal to A or 180 minus A. And the important thing is really just finding out which ones match with each other. And also remember, everything has always got to be relative to the parallel lines. That's how you line up or match up your corresponding angles. The relationship between angles combined to form a straight line. So that's what I just said. You have some angle A, some angle B. They form a straight line. Therefore, A plus B, they got to sum to 180, which is the angle measure of a straight line. So what it means is this B here is really just 180 minus A. The distance formula for calculating the distance between 2 points. The distance formula is really just Pythagorean theorem, but modified for the coordinate plane. Pythagorean theorem is A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. Well, in this case, you just have to find your A and B values by finding the X and Y distances between your 2 points. So the vertical and horizontal distances. And so distance should be the square root of y2 minus y1 all squared plus x2 minus x1 all squared. Remember, the plus sign is outside the parentheses. The minus sign is inside the parentheses. Relationship between vertical angles. So we talked about those a second ago. Vertical angles are just lines formed, or the angles formed when you have 2 lines that crisscross each other. The angles that are across from each other are called vertical angles. And so I say this measures 8 degrees. This angle here, these 2 angles are vertical angles, and therefore they are equal to each other. These are also vertical angles that are equal to each other. And you can prove these are equal to each other just by using what we said before about how 2 angles that form a straight line must add to 180 degrees. You can use that to prove these two are equal to each other and these two are equal to each other. And D is actually just going to be 180 minus A. And so you can get to everything in terms of single variable here. That is it for coordinate geometry. Thanks for listening.